If you take out all the internal dialogue in the scenes, there's like 3 plot points.
Hello, welcome back to the Dumb Fish Book Club. I'm Chandler.
And I'm Hayden.
And today we're going to be talking about Punk 57 by Penelope Douglas. I have been hinting at this video for quite a while. I think it's been like a year in the making at this point. And we're finally ready to bring it to you. I finally got Hayden to read one of my favorite romances. So it should be an interesting experience for everyone involved. I guess for some context, I first read this book in 2017. I remember staying up until like 3 a.m. to finish it. I had never really read indie romance before. This is one of the first that I think I read. It just delivered something that I don't feel like traditional published romance can deliver. In hindsight, I guess like rereading it a couple of times, in 2019 my feelings were much the same as 2017. This time around I feel like my feelings have maybe changed a little bit as I kind of have gotten older and read more indie romance, but it still holds a special place in my heart, so know that going into this. Hayden is kind of an unseasoned indie romancer. He's read a couple, like I've made him read Boys of Brayshaw, and what else have we read together? Back River Quiver, you know, nothing like truly quality. So in my opinion, this is the first quality read he's getting to get to read. Back
River Quiver, you still just like we didn't even read that one. You just like read me.
I just
some
read it
of
to you,
yeah.
Some passages, if you will. So I guess we can kick it off with the way that we normally do. What were your initial thoughts? What would you star rate this?
Wait, what's the star rating again?
1 through 5, baby.
Out of
1
5?
through 5. Good read style.
This one would be 3.5, I think.
I'll take it. I will take
3.5.
that.
Yeah. I don't know what I rated all of the previous books that we've done for dbbc.
I don't think you've done anything higher than a 3.
Yeah, this one was the best one of them, for sure.
I'll take it. I'll take it. I guess expanding upon that a little bit, what sets this aside from some of the other reads that I've forced you to read for this?
Well, I think I told you previously that asked me to read some fantasy romance.
Yeah, we've read From Blood and Ash and then also Court of Thorns and Roses. And you read the second one in that series too, right?
Yeah, and there was another one too.
Shadow and Bone.
Shadow and Bone, yeah.
You're really well versed in the YA fantasy space now.
Yeah, I wasn't a fan of any of those. I think I was telling you that the reason that I liked this one more than those is because I like fantasy, and I don't feel like those fantasy romance books or like YA fantasy did the fantasy portion of it well. It was like they were just like vehicles for the romance, but also the romance wasn't good either. They were trying to do 2 things at once and not really succeeding at either of them.
Yeah. I kind of agree to a certain extent. I think I've tried to kind of get into fantasy romance this year beyond just the YA books that I've read, but I have not had any success with any of them. I've not found a fantasy romance that I'm like, wow, this is fantastic. Because you're right, I do think that if you're doing a fantasy plot, it needs to be well done. And I do feel like if you're trying too hard with fantasy, then the romance kind of takes a back seat. So yeah, I don't know. It's tough. I do really like paranormal fantasies and urban fantasies. So, you know, like modern day with magic plus romance. I feel like those are done better. Like some Alona Andrews books. Maybe I'll make him read one of those next. I think he would actually enjoy one of the Hidden Legacy books. But yeah, I agree with you. I think like just a traditional fantasy with some romance just doesn't really work so well.
And that's why like this one was better than those because it actually just centered around the romance.
Yeah.
And so like it was doing exactly what it was trying to do.
Yeah.
Also, I mean, the writing was just a bit better.
I agree, and I told him going into this, like, I don't know how you'll feel about the writing, because it is an indie romance. A lot of the things that I've made him read are traditionally published, and one would assume that the editing and the writing in general would maybe be a bit better in a traditionally published book, but I have not necessarily found that to be the case. I mean, there's definitely, like, hallmarks of indie published writing, and I feel like you can tell usually that they're indie published, but I don't think that means they're inferior in any way to traditionally published works. In my experience, that is. So I kind of feel the same way about this book in comparison. My rating this time, I don't know. I'm sort of torn.
What was your initial rating?
5 stars. Just
okay.
Across the board. Like, this is my favorite romance of all time. Like, this is...
Wait, really?
Yes.
This is your favorite romance? I mean, I'm not, like, say I just didn't know that. I'm not saying, this is your favorite romance. You know, I just, like, didn't didn't know that.
Okay. Like, now as an adult person... I mean, not that I wasn't an adult in 2017, but I kind of wasn't. Like, I had just graduated college.
You've definitely grown a bit.
Yeah. I don't know. I want to say, like, more of the Tessa Bailey type stuff is, like, my true favorite at this point. But this one has such a place of nostalgia, not only because I read it in 2017, but because of, like, what I wanted as a youth, like a hot emo boy. Like, that's what I needed, right? So getting to live that fantasy, I felt, was quite delightful. And I think that's why. Like, there's just something there. I wouldn't say that this is, like, the steamiest romance out there after I've read so many, or maybe the best told story, but there's just something there that I don't know, I can't put my fingers on. So this time around, again, I don't know what my rating would be. The first 50% of the book, I was kind of not very invested, and I couldn't tell if that was just like, I have to read a million books for Chanmas videos, and like, I just don't have time to like really get into it. But the last 50%, I was like, okay, yeah, I remember why I love this book. So I don't know, maybe 4 stars. I'm gonna keep it at 5, obviously, on Goodreads, but I don't know. I don't know how I.
Do you ever go back and change your ratings on Goodreads?
Yeah, I certainly do. I remember like The Diviners. I read that this year. In high school, when I never rated books slowly, I rated that book 2 stars. This year I reread it, gave it 3 stars. Oftentimes though, if I reread a book, the rating goes down. So it just kind of depends. And yeah, I definitely will adjust if I reread, but I don't normally reread, so.
Gotcha.
Yeah. I guess we can get into the meat of the book now. Okay, where to begin? It's funny, having read this book 3 times, I still am not like that great at the plot, because let's be honest, it's mostly just like them kind of bullying each other and fucking.
It's just like, it just starts out with Misha talking about Ryan's letters and,
yeah,
you know.
we get Ryan's letter to Misha. He's reading it in his POV. This is a dual POV story. And
it's an older letter too. It's like he's like rereading one of the
Yes,
letters.
he's rereading one of her older letters because is this the one that he didn't reply to because his sister died?
No, actually, I mean, he just says this is one of my favorite
letters.
of hers.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we get a little bit of
I already know how it ends is like what he says, you know.
Yeah. We get some context about like sort of his family. We get a little bit about his family in the beginning of the book, maybe not the first chapter, and we also know that he's in a band and he's gonna have to go to
a fundraiser
kind of, so they can go on tour or something like that. Yeah. There he gets to meet his pen pal in real life. She doesn't know who he is. He doesn't really know who she is. Like, they've never met face to face. They don't know what they look like. They've never looked each other up on Facebook. And he doesn't want to know who she is. I mean, he does, but like kind of doesn't.
He just hears her name and is like, no way it could be her. And then he like looks her up on Facebook
and confirms that the girl that he sees at this party, who he thinks is pretty hot, is actually the Ryan that he's been writing to since, what, 3rd grade or something like that?
Yeah.
I really liked the opening of this book, I will say. Like, to me, not only do I like a good emo boy, but I love a pen pal romance. Like, to me, having backstory baked in, I think is important if you're going to do a story like this. I like it. And I just love the idea of, like, they didn't know each other's identities, but they formed a friendship on more than that. And I guess for me, as someone who kind of grew up on the internet and made friends online that I never met in real life, I could totally see how this could be like a good foundation for a friendship and romance. So that's my thoughts on that. How did you feel about the opening of this book, I guess? Like, what were your initial thoughts on the whole pen pal thing, and also like just him meeting her, like knowing who she was before she knew who he was?
I don't know, the first part of the book was like kind of interesting. Like, it didn't
grip you?
Yeah, it didn't grip me, but it was okay. You know, like that's the thing. Like, I don't really know how to feel about this book because I didn't love it. You know, because it's just like not my style, I guess, you know?
Fair enough.
And not just because it's a romance, it's like specifically because it's so emo. And what was I talking to you about the other day? And I couldn't remember the word that I was looking for.
Melodramatic.
Yeah, it's very melodramatic. Yeah.
We were talking in the car. I was like kind of waiting with bated breath for him to give me like his update. He tends to update me when he reads a book for this. I told him
just
not
like as I go.
Yeah, I told him not to tell me too much, but he did tell me he wasn't hating it, which I found exciting. And then he said it is very melodramatic, and I agree.
It was the only thing that it made it hard for me to get into is because I'm not melodramatic. I don't know anyone who's really melodramatic, you know, in my life. Like, I've never really had friends like that and stuff. Like, very difficult for me to relate to someone who is.
Would you not consider me a little melodramatic?
No, not like that. Definitely not.
Not to this extent.
Yeah, not like a story character, you know?
We have 2 cats on our bed. They're a little distracting. In a sweet way. They just want rubs.
But, like, that being said, yeah, like I said, the writing wasn't bad. It's interesting because this is how I'm comparing the book. You know, I'm just comparing it to the other ones that you've made me read. And so my baseline that I'm comparing to is like pretty low, you know? So the whole time I was just like, yeah, this is just like readable. You know?
Yeah.
I didn't want to like gouge my eyes out. Some of these books have been hard for me to get through. What's interesting is that you were saying that the first half of this book you were like, you know, kind of like...
Yeah, not invested.
Yeah, not super invested. And then by the second half, you were like, oh yeah, that's why I like this book. It was kind of opposite for me. I was like, first half, I was kind of, okay. And then by the last half of it, I was just like, can we just wrap this shit up?
But the twist
you gotta admit, the last half of the book, it's just the same thing happening over and over again. One of them does something and gets mad, and then fucks the other one, like physically, like has sex with them.
What about that isn't exciting?
Yeah, but it just happens like 4 or 5 times in a row, you know? And like nothing really happens in between, except for the like twists that come at the end
Yeah.
keep getting barely mentioned over and over again, and that's just it, you know? And I'm like, can we like progress this plot line a bit? Because nothing's really happening. You're just kind of going to school.
So one thing that we do get at the beginning of the story is a scene between Misha and his sister Annie, and he sees her running on the side of the road, and we don't really know her fate after that. He says like, oh, I'm gonna follow you home, or something like that.
Well, the interesting thing to me is that I'm fairly certain that he makes a point to sit there until she gets in her car and drives away.
So I think she probably died another night. We're just supposed to know that this is like a risky thing.
No, that is the night.
That's early the night that she dies?
Yeah, because he's on his way to the warehouse when he sees her, and the whole reason that he's like pissed at himself for the entire rest of the book is because he was at the warehouse having fun and meeting with Ryan, which he doesn't normally do, doesn't follow his instincts or whatever, and like shirks his responsibilities of like making sure that his sister is taken care of to like have fun for one night, and that's the night that she dies. She had called him of all people when she needed help, but he like ignored the call.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Again, I'm not like a super detail-oriented reader. I mean, like, I feel like I could have known that happened, but I just didn't know the details. Anyway.
But yeah.
We get that scene.
That's the night. But that's what I didn't really understand, is because I'm 90% sure that he makes a point to stop in his truck and wait until she gets in her car.
I thought so too.
And drives away before he leaves.
Maybe it's a plot hole, or maybe we're missing something.
I don't know. There's another plot hole that I'll mention later that's like it's like really stupid.
But it's irritating to you?
It was like a couple of sentences away from each other. Anyways, we'll get to that. That one just kind of was like, did no one edit this book?
So Annie's running. Whatever, we have this interaction where he's like, you shouldn't be running on this dark road at night. She gets in her car, he ends up leaving and going to the warehouse. After the Annie shit, after Misha ends up going to the warehouse, seeing Ryan for the first time, we get a time jump 3 months into the future, and we get to see Ryan's point of view, and we get to see her at school interacting with her friends. And it's not immediately obvious, at least I didn't think it was immediately obvious, that Ryan is very different than she portrays herself to be in her letters to Misha. You don't get it immediately because we don't get a ton of the letters up front. Like, sure, we get this one, but we don't know her whole personality from this one letter. But we know pretty early on that she's kind of bitchy. She runs in kind of like the popular crowd. I think in this first opening scene, we get to see Trey, the kind of douchebag love interest, bullying someone. I think he bullies Manny in this like first opening scene pretty early on in the book. And again, we kind of get this idea that they might not be great people. Pretty early on after that, we get to see them go to this kind of like abandoned amusement park. And we get the first hints of Misha and like where he is now. We know that he's living in this abandoned amusement park, and we get to see, I think Ryan ends up finding the little lair where he's at.
Yeah, because she takes his stuff.
She
takes like a piece of paper that has like some lyrics on it, and 10 actually steals
the locket.
He steals like, the locket.
He steals the locket, which was Annie's locket. Whenever they go to school the next day, we have Misha pretending to be Mason there. He's like a new student, and he immediately asks her basically, where the fuck's my stuff? And
he's like an asshole before that. Like, he riles her up on purpose. So yeah, Misha asks for his stuff back. She doesn't give him his stuff back immediately, and then he just like shows up at her house.
Yeah, he
broke
into her house and stole her diary. Like, she comes into her bedroom, he's in there, and he's like, hey, you didn't give me my shit back, I'm gonna steal this, and I'm gonna plaster it all over the walls of school. And he obviously doesn't do that, but they have this sort of like altercation, and there's also just like altercations in general between the two of them in this kind of early stage in the book. Yeah,
like he embarrasses her in the cafeteria, and also like tells her she tastes like shit.
How did you feel about that iconic scene?
Kind of fucking weird, honestly.
I think that's sort of a running theme here, right? Hayden has pointed out, we were reading this book in bed together yesterday, like separately but together, which was kind of romantic if you ask me. He was commenting on his not distaste for the sexual encounters here, but he did say like, I'm not loving it, and also certain language usage.
Okay, no, so here's the interesting thing.
I pointed it out first, but
actually I kind of feel the opposite, at least in comparison to the other sex scenes that I've had to read for dbbc books. These were much better.
So what about this early stuff though, where it's not like they're not actually engaging in any stuff, it's just like he's like pulling her into his lap in the cafeteria and then like throwing her off of him? Like, how did you feel about that? Care? Like, you just said you thought it was weird.
I wasn't. No. It was mostly just like the "you taste like shit" part.
That's romance, baby.
I don't know. I don't really know that I felt any kind of way about it. But no, I was just gonna say, like, I appreciated the sex scenes in this book because they were a little more just like upfront, I would say. Like, they didn't say like his manhood and stuff like that.
He made the mountain tremble with his pleasure.
Yeah, exactly. Which I always, like, I hate that so much.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I am not big on sexual euphemisms, especially the older that I get. I feel like, again, ACOTAR was one of the first books that I read getting back into reading in college. And I had never really read, why did I say that? I did read Black Dagger Brotherhood before I read ACOTAR, and that was back, like, early high school. But for the most part, I hadn't read very sexually explicit books up until that point. So for me, I feel like those books I thought were, like, kind of hot at the time. And now, like, having read those books with you, I can kind of understand how they're not, like, the best. And also how far my reading taste has come, I guess. Like, I really do appreciate upfront sexual content, and I like it, I don't want to say extreme now, but I like good dirty talk, and that's like a crucial component of stories for me. And I'm realizing after, you know, having reread this book that there's a little bit in here, but I was just like, I was on the surface of the dirty talk game, and now I feel like I'm like up here. Like, I know my dirty talk game when it comes to a good romance. Like, I can find the good stuff. I didn't really find that here reading it the second time. So I guess maybe that's why it felt a little bit lackluster.
If there wasn't that much dirty talk?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I'm unlocking things in my brain. That's why this, like, if I were to rate it today, I think it would be a 4 out of 5-star read for me, because there was some hints of goodness, but it didn't go all the way there for me. Yeah, I agree. I do think it was up front, but it wasn't for me. So I felt like whenever I read this book the first time, that scene where he has her on his lap in the cafeteria, I thought that shit was like steamy as hell. I was like, damn, the sexual tension here.
Okay, but also, like, my opinion reading this, because they're not like, together, they don't know each other.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, like, I guess technically they do at some level, but she doesn't really know him. It was interesting to me that he was just as much of a douchebag as the douchebag character. The pulling onto the lap would not get me hot and horny, you know?
Here's the thing. She was kind of a bitch to him when she walked up to him. He knew that she was going to come over and kind of give him shit. Like, when he saw her approach, he was like, okay. And he also knows her. That's something that I think...
Yeah, but she doesn't know him, and that's, like, the whole thing. I knew everything about you, but you didn't know me, and then I pulled you onto my lap. Would that make it less
It was mutual.
bad?
She was writing him letters. He was writing her letters.
Oh,
what
that.
doesn't make sense about
Yeah, that. I thought you meant the pulling onto the lap.
It was a mutual thing.
All I'm trying to say is that she was definitely not into it. Like, we see this scene from her perspective, and she's not into it.
She literally is. She says she feels his erection on her.
No, they don't say that at this point.
I'm pretty sure.
No, she's just angry about it. She is only angry about it.
I don't think that's true.
We can pull the book out
Where's
if you
the
want.
book? Where's the book?
It's right here. I like girls.
Heat races through my blood. Let me read it for our people.
Heat races through my blood could definitely be just anger, which, like, she is just angry.
His warmth immediately courses through my hand, making my stomach flip a little. I take my hand off his chest. She's, like, leaning into him as he's doing this. Like, she's playing along with him. It's not like he's...
Either way, like, this book is literally full of moments where...
I feel my skin start to hum as he just holds my eyes.
You cannot deny to me that this book is full of moments where the girl says no and the guy says, what do you mean? Come on. You want me deep inside you. That's exactly how it sounds.
Okay, so...
And how it feels.
So, okay, this is sort of a valid complaint. I will not disagree. I think that is a complaint that a lot of people have about this book. I disagree because it's a bully romance and they're both in it on the bully side.
But my whole point is that it was interesting to me that he does that just as much as the guy who is supposed to be, like, the biggest douchebag. Like, a caricature of a douchebag.
See, but I disagree with that. There's some similarities.
Because he only does it to one person?
There are some similarities. I think the difference is that he does not assume that it is a given. And I know that you might disagree with that, but the way that Trey says things, she's like, you're gonna be my prom date, you're gonna do this. And I'm not saying that Misha
at one point he literally says the line, I'm the shit, and I get what I want.
Trey, not Misha.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm saying, like, I'm not saying that he is not kind of, like, alpha and, like, you know, trying to, like, get her in his bed, but he does not go to that, like, he doesn't talk a big game for the most part until they've slept together. He's like, you're mine. So after this first interaction that we have between them, it's not the first interaction, but after this, like, first kind of weird sexual encounter, I guess you could say, in the cafeteria, the book kind of carries on in the same vein. We do get sort of like little nuggets of Misha's past and his background because we have him pretending to be Mason at the school. We're not really sure why he's doing that up front, so we get some kind of context for that as the story goes on, but mostly this book is just interactions between Misha and Ryan. She is falling for a guy who she doesn't think is Misha, Mason, she finds herself kind of drawn to him against her better judgment. They end up having sex together, having some like other sexual encounters as the story goes on, some of which happen at school, after hours, and like, I don't know, there's just like forbidden romancy scenes, I guess you could say, with a touch of bullying still going on because Misha feels like Ryan is someone that he doesn't know. You know, he's gotten these letters from this girl who he thinks is really like independent and bold and like a free thinker, and then he sees her in school and she's just kind of a bitch, and she's a follower, and he is upset by this.
And she's like shallow and you know, like picks on kids, which in her internal dialogue you see that she's not really picking on other people, she just doesn't stand up for it because she just like is trying to fit in. She's so insecure and you know thinks that like no one actually likes her, or actually knows that no one actually likes her.
But we find out through the course of the story that she had a hard time growing up, like she didn't have friends when she was younger, and so this is her way of like having friends, is just to try to fit in with the cool crowd, and it's not super successful because we see from the beginning really her friend Lila isn't really a friend. Ten is a friend, and they do, you know, continue on their friendship.
JD's kind of a homie.
JD is too.
But like, I mean, he doesn't really do anything homie-like until the end. Yeah. And then Trey obviously is like the douchebag who's trying to get Ryan to sleep with him and go to prom with him, but we know that he's not a very viable love interest. Yeah, and he also like Lila like pretty early into the book.
Yeah, he ends up
Mason like sees them like banging in the shower after hours at school.
Yeah.
While what's her face is, you know, giving swim lessons.
Yeah, where Ryan's giving swim lessons. So as the story carries on, I think the biggest plot points are whenever we have Misha and Ryan, like there's the reveal there. She kind of figures out who Misha is.
She sees some lyrics on her wall at one point. Is like, that sounds like it could be lyrics to a song, so she Googles the lyrics and then sees a YouTube video of their band. I can't remember what it is. It's something core. Cypher core. Like, what the fuck kind of a name of band?
I know. She ends up like going on a whole Google deep dive, finds out that Misha is one of the band members and that this was the band that was playing the night in the warehouse. And she's like, so this man has been lying to me for a while. This guy that I've been sleeping with is a complete lie. And she's rightfully pretty angry about this, and she kind of stops talking to Misha, and
she goes to his place at the theme park and busts all of his shit up and like takes her letters back from him. He has like
a
her
whole stash.
favorite letters.
His favorite letters that she has written him in a box. She takes it, and he's upset because he's like, these are important to me. I love you, bitch. I never gonna stop loving you, bitch. Then we get a little bit of plot, I guess you could say. Like, things kind of carry on. We get kind of a makeup scene between them for the most part, and we get this reveal that Annie has died. And not only is Annie dead, but the whole reason that Mason, aka or Misha, is at the school in the first place, like, why was he at the school? You know, the whole time you're kind of like, what the fuck is this?
Well, the whole time you're thinking that, because you see him at one point break into the principal's office and steal like an envelope full of stuff from a filing cabinet, and you just kind of assume that it's something of Annie. It's like Annie's like records, or like, you know, some kind of like clippings or pictures or something of her. And then he also at some point breaks into the principal's house, who is Trey's stepmom. And he's looking for something that is his. He's like, I'm not going to take anything that isn't mine, like isn't already mine. They have something of mine.
In the process, they end up finding some like dirty pictures,
which like I knew this was coming like very early into the book. I don't know if that's like abnormal, huh?
What part?
The big reveal at the very end. If you just want to go ahead and like
I didn't. Okay. Anyway, reveal. I'm gonna take us through the plot a little bit more. They end up finding Trey's pictures that he's taken of women that he has had sexual encounters with.
Lots of them.
And we're not sure if these are like willing or unwilling participants in terms of the acts themselves and also the pictures that are being taken. So they take all of these pictures and they throw them in the parents' room, and hopefully he'll get some sort of punishment for this.
Oh, this right here was the dumb like little plot hole thing.
Okay, tell me.
But whenever he is talking about like from his perspective, there's a chapter where he's talking about his plans to go break into their house to like get the last thing that he's looking for, and then he's gonna skip town, right? And he's like, at first he says, Trey has a baseball game on Friday. The whole family will be out, and that's when I'm gonna, you know, go in there or whatever. 5 sentences later, he's like, So now I'm just waiting for Saturday when Trey's baseball game is and everyone's gonna be gone. I was like, you couldn't even get like the day of the week, like a couple sentences away.
I did not notice
They
that.
say Friday and then they say Saturday, or like vice versa. I can't remember which one it is, but I was like, which one is it, man?
So he doesn't find what he's looking for, but again, he finds his pictures, and Trey gets his comeuppance at some point. But then we find out at the very end of the book, basically, that the principal is actually Misha's mom, and he's trying to see, like, hey, did you know your fucking daughter died? Like, did you care when any of this happened? Like, what the fuck? Like, you're a piece of shit. And I liked that the resolution to that was not to actually get anything from her. I liked that he had already kind of, like, made his peace, I guess, with the fact that his mom's a piece of shit and never wanted anything to do with her actual kids, and instead is raising this, like, horrible stepbrother, or I guess stepson, Trey. We also understand, too, that he was looking for a watch that belonged to, I think, his grandfather or something like that.
Yeah, it was his grandfather's watch, and, like, it was traditionally passed down to, like, the eldest kid each generation.
Yeah, and somehow Trey got it probably, you know, from the principal mom or whatever.
Yeah, she stole it on her way out.
Yeah, stole it. I mean, she took it.
Well, no, I mean, like, he literally says at one point, like, how fucked up of it was her to purposefully steal one of the only, like...
Babe, I get what you're saying, but I think that was also just, like, that's Misha's point of view on the situation. Like, I mean, I'm not saying she's not a bad person, but, like, also, that's probably just his... Like, I'm sure that she just took it with her stuff. Like, I don't think it was like, I'm gonna take this. Fuck my kids.
No, she does, because she leaves the band of it. She literally only takes the watch. Like, she takes it on purpose as, like, one last, like, jab at the dad on the way out. Because he wears the band all the time, and it's missing the watch. And he's like, it's an antique Jaeger.
Okay, anyway.
Anyways. But yeah, she takes it spitefully.
She takes it spitefully, and he basically says, like, tell me you never loved me, tell me, like, blah, blah, blah. And she does, and she's, like, crying the whole time. So, like, obviously she kind of cares about him, but that's it with that plot line.
I don't think she cares about him. I think she's just realized she's a piece of shit.
Sure.
That's how I felt about it.
I just think it's, like, semantics at this point. Like, who cares?
I mean, there's, like, this is the only thing that we're talking about. What do you mean, who cares?
We get a resolution on that plot line, and we get Misha and Ryan living happily ever after. I was gonna say that there's some, like, grand sort of them coming back together, but there's really not. Like, there's not, like, one pivotal scene where they're, like, back together.
So there's, like, a couple of things here that I gotta say.
All right.
But I don't know if we're, like, close to wrapping up or whatever, but before we wrap up, there's a couple of thoughts here, right? Though I was saying that this book, I didn't, like, you know, hate it or anything, I did feel like there wasn't a whole lot of romance. It was just the only romance happened in the, like, first chapter of the book when they talk about the fact that they've been writing for 7 years and that he's, like, never seen her, you know, and then they have that meeting at the warehouse when she doesn't know who he is, but he knows who she is. That was, in my mind, the only romance that happens in the book. Everything else is him being an asshole, and then they fuck. And then she's an asshole, and then they fuck. In between all of that are these ideas of, like, bullying people. What's the kid's name that they bully all the time? Manny. Talking about how he huffs fucking spray paint to, like, make the pain go away.
I shouldn't laugh. It's not funny, but it is. Just the way that it's revealed.
The abandonment of Misha by his mom. His dad falling apart at his daughter's death, and, like, Misha and him not being able to communicate. Ryan realizing that she's been a real piece of shit her whole life for, like, trying to trade away quality friends for a high quantity of friends for, like, being popular. None of those things are sexy topics. So it was, like, literally, let's get depressed. It was like, give me, like, a chapter where, like, I just, like, don't want to live anymore, and then watch me, like, thrust my inside of you, you know?
This is so gonna get demonetized. Fuck.
But that's how I felt about this book. Like, there wasn't any romance to me. And then, like,
You've got my wheels turning right now. You're not wrong. You're not wrong.
The biggest kick in the nuts is like you said, there's no real, like, them getting back together moment. We just get this epilogue where 5 years in the future...
Okay, pause. He told me today, I finished the book, what the fuck was that ending? Like, he was not happy with this epilogue. I think it's perfectly fine. What about it pissed you off?
Because, like you said, there's no real, they get back to, like, they do, I guess, get back together.
Did they go to prom? I thought they went to to prom.
They do go to prom, and he, like, sings her a song at prom.
That's romance, baby.
Yeah, I get. There's one romantic moment in the whole thing. The rest of it is just, like, depressing ideas mixed with and then we just get this epilogue where, like, for absolutely no reason, Misha's band is, like, worldwide famous after 5 years. She went to Cambridge or something like that. He, like, followed her there after a little while, and then after that, like, pursued his dreams and, like, got the original band back together, reunited Cyphercore. The whole world is going crazy for Cyphercore now. And she's pregnant with his babies.
What about that's uncool? To me, that's a very cool.
I was just like, oh. The worst part of it was they didn't just, like, say all of that. The way that they did it was she was leaving her house and, like, the paparazzi were outside asking her questions about Misha.
It's
you know,
giving
like,
me very much Skater Boy Avril
and she
Lavigne.
said, he's in the cave writing right now.
Fuck.
I was just like, yeah, I can't.
So what we're
can't do
learning
this.
today is that Hayden's not into romance epilogues. This is very common in romance epilogues.
Where, like, just 5 years later, like, not only do they live happily ever after, but it's like...
They're married and have kids.
No,
period.
not that. The thing that annoys me is there is nothing in the book that tells me that he's even, like, really good at what he does musically. Especially not enough to be world famous after, like, no one knowing about them. Oh, and before the epilogue even happens, at the very end, she's, like, looking through his mail, and,
she's the one that tells him, you need to follow your dreams, and it's all because of her.
And she's like, check this out, there's a letter right here, and it's for a major record label. They're interested in you. And it's like, what the fuck? First of all, major record labels don't send mail to people.
For context, Hayden plays in a couple of different bands, so he has a little bit of context.
I was just like, dude, what are you talking about, man? And especially after he was saying he didn't even know if he was gonna go on tour, you know, all this stuff. It was like, it seemed like there was not really any work put into it.
He's famous.
He's just famous. And not only famous, but, like, as famous as you can be. Like, I think she even says to him in the epilogue, not everyone gets the chance to be a god or something like that. Can't do this.
I love cheesy, nonsensical romance epilogues. They make me needlessly excited and happy. I just love it.
I'm happy for
I
it.
like to see people happy, married, and having babies. And I know that not everybody wants that, and I get it, but I like it.
I wouldn't have minded a happily ever after, but it was just a little too much. Like, mostly it was like the worldwide fame of the band and, like, her talking to the paparazzi and
it was cheesy, but it worked.
Not only that, but her, like, friend is the wife of JD, who's, like, the baseball player or whatever, you know, like a pro baseball player as well. And I was just like, oh, so she's just, like, famous and all of her friends are famous, so she's still a shallow piece of shit?
Damn. Hayden's really cut into the core of this.
Just the ending of the book irritated me, and I had to vent about it.
I have many thoughts now. Okay. The first thing that I feel like I need to say after your little diatribe, I actually appreciated that. I did. It told me a lot about what you look for in a story. And I think...
An ending that makes sense?
I think that I know what we're reading next. This has helped me a lot.
Okay, the way that you're saying that is like you're
listen.
going to make me read something that I'm, like, actually gonna hate.
No, I think you'll like it more. So, this is my OG favorite, right? But I have a new favorite this year. And I don't even have to say the name because I've talked about this book like 3 times, 4 times, a million times this month, okay? And you're probably sick of me talking about it. We're absolutely gonna have to read It Happened One Summer. Like, it's gonna happen. It has incredible dirty talk, but it also has romance and romantic development that I think Hayden's looking for. It's also funny.
I'm dead inside.
Also, another thing that I was curious if you noticed. So Misha goes to jail, right? Mm-hmm. He gets bailed out of jail by his cousin Will and his 2 felon friends. Mm-hmm. How did you feel about that? Like, did you like them as characters? Do you want to know more about them? Because I have a series for you.
Sure. It was like... They had, like, 3 lines each. It was hard for me to get...
too excited about it? Fair.
Yeah, like,
Fair.
Interested in them as characters when that was it.
This, I think, was the first Penelope Douglas book that I read, and I didn't understand the cameos the first time I read it. The second time around, I did, and then this time I really got into it more, just because, like, I've read all of the books in
You reread those 3 lines a couple of times?
The Devil's Night series. Misha's cousin Will is the 4th book in the Devil's Night series, but all 4 of the dudes have their own book, and they're dark romances. There's a bully component to all of them.
Is there a prison component to any of them?
Yes, there is. No, they're out of prison by the time they start getting with people, but they're sort of like a revenge plot, like who sent us to prison. Mm-hmm. And then 2 or maybe 3 of the women, they're like suspicious of. They're like, you sent us to prison. It was your fault. And so they kind of like bully
now I'm
her.
gonna yeah. Is that how it goes? Because that's how this book felt.
Yes, sometimes.
No money for you.
Sometimes there's more than 2 people involved in these encounters as well.
Sounds fun.
Yeah, it could be fun. So maybe we'll read those at some point. Probably not though. I don't think I'll subject you to more P-Dug unless it's like Birthday Girl. I think the next book we need to read.
P-Dug? Yeah, people know them.
On the streets, yeah. But no, now that you're telling me this, I really feel like it happened one summer's the mood and the vibe. And the move. I know that you're not excited about it, but I am gonna get a 5-star romance out of him at some point. It's gonna happen.
I would be fine with that.
Like, you'd be fine with, like, enjoying romance. Like,
yeah.
your heart's open to the possibility of enjoying romance.
The difficult thing is, like, for the last, like, 2 years or so, I've just always been in the middle of reading a book that I'm actually enjoying, you know? So it's going to be difficult to catch me at a time where, like, that's the book that I would give 5 stars to at the time, you know?
So what I'm hearing is you're gonna finish this last Eye of the World, or Wheel of Time book.
I only have an hour left in it.
All right, so I know what we're reading in an hour.
No, because then I have to finish The Expanse.
Excuses.
And also I still have...
He's not dedicated to
and
that book
also
left.
I still have New Spring to read as well.
No one cares about a goddamn novella.
And I also have The Expanse novellas.
Fuck you.
I already read one of them. It was really good.
I'm really happy for you. And I'm happy I subjected you to this.
Yeah, like I said, it wasn't bad, except for the epilogue. Like I said, it's just kind of like, it wasn't bad, but also it didn't really get me that
Moist.
into it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I am not surprised by any of your reactions, and this gives me a lot to work with, both in selecting our next book, which I've just selected.
Is this what dbbc is, like, going to be now? Where, like, instead of us talking about dumb bitches...
I mean, are you saying Brian's not a dumb bitch?
No, she is, 100%. But I'm saying, like, now the goal of dbbc is to, like, find a romance that I would 5-star.
I don't think that that's, like, the forever goal, you know? And I don't know that that's actually possible. Because for me, like, it's hard to find a 5-star fantasy because that's just not my genre. So I'm not really expecting you to find a 5-star, but... I'm gonna damn sure try. I know what we're reading next. Like, It Happened One Summer's happening next. But after that, the world's our oyster. I don't know what we'll read next. Let us know in the comments down below what you think we should read next. I mean, it's gonna be It Happened One Summer, but I'm saying, like, after that. What do you want to see from us? Like, fantasy? More romance? What excites you? What gets you moist? With that being said, I think those are all of our thoughts and feelings on Punk 57. I had a good time. Maybe not as good of a time as I have had in previous readings of this story, but it still means something to me, and I'm glad that I got Hayden to read one of my OG faves, and now we're going to get him to read a modern classic, a modern favorite, if you will, in Tessa Bailey's It Happened One Summer. So
yeah, I didn't hate it, and you know, in terms of dumb bitches,
Brian's not too bad.
She wasn't that dumb. She was just in high school.
Amen.
That's all I can say, you know.
And now I will go feed our cats. Thanks so much for watching. Love y'all so much, and until tomorrow.